Welcome to you all for today's exciting session, in which we hope you'll have some key takeaways from our expert panel, and also that you'll participate fully by putting in all of your questions into the chat so that we can answer those as well. And you can do that throughout today's panel session. My name's Clare Patterson, and I'm on the advisory board for CyberCompare. And also I'm a researcher for a PhD in cybersecurity. But let me move on and introduce our panel. So first up, you'll see Michael Reiter. He's the CISO and VP for IT infrastructure for Rolls-Royce Power Systems. He has 25 years of experience in information and cybersecurity, and is also an ISO 27001 lead auditor. He's the founding member responsible for the Critical Infrastructure Industry Working Group. And so let me ask you, Michael, what motivates you to be involved in cybersecurity?
Hello, the audience, and thank you, Claire. Yeah, so for the first thing is, as a cybersecurity expert, you have a very deep insight in all processes and procedures inside the company. And you have a lot of contact with diversity of people, which makes it very interesting. And also beyond, I'm really technology affine, and I like to see insights how technology IT systems works. Thank you.
Excellent. And now let me introduce Angela. Angela is a professor of human-centered security at Ruhr University Bochum. She focuses on security understanding and behavior of IT users. Previously, she was a lecturer at computer science at University College London, UCL, where she took over as chair of the human-centered technology. And she founded the Research Institute for Social Technical Cybersecurity Risks, which is linked with the NCSC in the UK. And she set up the Chair for Human-Centered Security at Bochum. So Angela, what role do you think psychology plays in cybersecurity?
Psychology is one of several humanities and social science disciplines that can really explain human behavior in security. I think very often when technical cybersecurity experts have a problem with human behavior in security, and very often it is those people aren't doing what I tell them to do, right? They're not following my policies, or they make mistakes when they're using the security tools I give them. It's often, you know, they hope there is a magic bullet, such as, oh, if I recruit only introverted people, then everything will be fine. They'll do everything right? Or that they think there is a single intervention, such as nudging people, that can fix the behavior. That's not so. We need really insights from psychology, but also really basic human factors, human error theory. You know, the knowledge that has revolutionized aircraft cockpit design and safety procedures in air traffic control. And we also need understanding from organizational science, sociology, sometimes even anthropology. You know, if we're trying to understand security needs and security behavior, sometimes rituals and superstitions that stop people from behaving securely.
Excellent. So we've got Michael fascinated with the technology side, Angela fascinated with the people side of things, and then we move on to our third panelist, Florian Bankoley, who's Executive Vice President for Global Information Systems at Bosch. He has a master's degree in management, and working for Bosch has worked for a number of roles in countries such as China, Sweden, and Germany. His position today is as the business interface lead in the Global Information Systems and Services Division. And he's also an advisory council member at Bosch Management Support, where the industrial and digital worlds meet together. So, Florian, what challenges have you faced in industrial cybersecurity?
Thanks, Claire. And you basically just mentioned it. So where industrial meets digital, that's where cybersecurity exactly comes up. And let me quickly take you to some of the challenges we have. So we have more than 200 manufacturing plants worldwide. And over the years, there's a very heterogeneous landscape. So IT landscape, application landscape that has been built up. And as long as they were isolated, this was not such a big problem. But with Industry 4.0 and the ongoing connectivity, this becomes a problem because now you have open attack vectors, as you would say, in the manufacturing plants that can actually spread not only locally, but also to global systems. So with that, there is a, let's say, big potential with Industry 4.0 and the ongoing connectivity, but also a threat. And that's what we have been working on, kind of looking at the overall landscape, taking stock and closing gaps. So this is what I think of when I think of industrial cybersecurity. I look into our plant landscape and think of all the challenges, but also opportunities we have there.
Indeed, and you see more and more that overlap between industrial and IT, the two worlds colliding. So excellent. We have a fantastic panel to solve all of the problems that we're going to talk about today, it seems. We've got all angles covered. So let's move on to our first topic. What are the lessons we've learned in security and how can security be implemented better? We had the initial worms back in 1988, and now you've got millions of attacks every day. So how come we're not solving this yet? You know, what are the lessons we need to learn in securing companies? So Michael, can I start with you? Why haven't you solved it all?
So first of all, I would say it's not a shame to become a victim. That's very important. I believe everybody, every company, it doesn't matter how good they are, they can be victim of a cyber attack. And in the last months and couple of weeks, we saw a lot of security specialized companies which have been also hacked. So from that point of view, I believe it could meet everybody. And it doesn't matter if your organization is big or small and national or global or whatever, which branch you are. They have to ensure that their environment will be secure. And the very important thing on that is that they have been, or that they are prepared. So let's say assume breach and then prepare yourself. What will you do? I would do a kind of explanation like we have with the firefighters. So in a town, you have a firefighter, right? But it's not only if there is a fire, also if accident or if you have a lake, whatever. You have to prepare with different tools. You cannot have a sea or a lake and you don't have a boat to rescue somebody. So you have to think in front, what is your environment and what do you need in case of an incident? And so for the firefighters, they need a boat and they need trained people who can use it, but they also need divers and all that equipment. On the cyber, it's exactly the same. It depends on which business you have. If you have a plant or if you're developing software, it's different. But then you have to prepare yourself. And that's the lessons we have learned, I believe. Also that, first of all, that it could meet all companies, doesn't matter. Second, we have to prepare and assume an incident. It's not the question if, it's more the question when you will be hacked. So that's the next lessons we learned. And also that the human being is one of the weakest part of it, because when you come in and if you look how attacks start, it's mostly over a human being. It's not over technology at all.
So you raise that difficult challenge of those pesky humans that we have. If only we replace them all with machines, wouldn't life be much simpler? But and I think we're going to Angela there. But you're exactly right. All of the companies are being impacted, whether it's ones that actually specialize in security, even like FireEye and people like that, or Microsoft, or some of the other biggest providers are all having issues there. But Angela, can I ask you to sort of pick up on that phrase, that bait that Michael's given you there, on what role do humans play when it comes to both the sort of technical and organizational changes that we see, and what lessons have we learned about humans?
I think the lessons that we've learned is the phrase "the weakest link" is that they are the weakest link. It's not helpful, because it implicitly assigns blame for those people to the breach or to the incident, right? And I think we can all agree, that if a single click on a link, or opening a macro, that the system lets you do it, if that can bring down your entire security and trigger a catastrophic chain of events, then your defenses weren't very good in the first place, right? Because I think this kind of, this myth that people are the weakest link and unpredictable is we should think about this differently, because it stops us from doing the things that we need to do in order to improve our security, right? It's, basically not everybody can be a security expert. So that means the security responsibilities and the knowledge and behavior that you need in order to discharge those responsibilities need to be clearly identified for different groups of employees. And that needs to be delivered through training, proper training, not standard security packages where everybody gets to go through the same, 57 websites and click like, yes, I get it. That type, I'm sorry, but that is not training, and it's a complete waste of money. It actually puts people off. It transmits a negative idea of what security is, and a lot of people, and also, I'm just vehemently against this kind of, this wave that's going on at the moment of phishing your own employees, so they're sitting there every day, worrying about if they're being attacked again or tested again by their own company. That is all. It's all this negativity is really is moving us in the wrong direction. And yes, all employees have some responsibility, some contribution to make, but that contribution needs to be clearly defined. It needs to be doable, and people need to be educated and trained to do these things correctly. And I just don't think we have done that. I think the other issue is, when we talk about doable, is that I still have to, after over 20 years of doing this type of research, I have never found a CISO, maybe my colleagues here would be different, but when I go into the company and ask them, specific groups of employees, how many policies do they really have to know about and interact with, and how much time do they have to spend on doing that? I have never gotten an answer, and this is one of the most fundamental things. Time is money. It's not just the salaries you're paying, it's opportunity cost. Those people are rewarded for different things. And we need to really fit security into our main business, our production, and really target things better. And we want employees that really want to do the right thing for security, and that can feel good, feel competent in the security duties they have, and discharge them, and be positive about it. That's what we need. If we're fighting, I've been saying this for many years, if we fight each other and assign blame to each other, we're just making the attackers' games easier. You know, if that clicking on a link is really such a problem, maybe you should look at your business processes and see whether you need embedded links at all. It's very easy to stop people from clicking on links if they have, for their main job, no need to do that.
And but you raised some really important points there, Angela, around how do we get people to understand how to do the role that they need to do with security in mind, and see security more positively. And I want to move on to Florian, who definitely has his work cut out in convincing a whole new sort of audience in the industrial control space who might not be as so familiar with the sort of security or understanding of the risks. What lessons have you learned in securing that space?
What I would say is, and it's a little bit seconding what Angela has said, awareness is the first start. Kind of, okay, can we raise awareness why security is important and why security is business critical? So it's not an afterthought that some guy from corporate says you need to have security procedures, otherwise you're violating corporate directive 3057, but kind of coming from what is the expected outcome? You have a problem, let's take one example, in your production plant, because if this one critical system you have, which is not secured, fails, you're not producing a single part. So if this was not a software, an application, but this was a different production process, what would you do? You would spend a lot of time making sure that this production process is ensured, secured, and you have redundancy. So looking at it from a value stream point of view, saying, okay, let's look at your production process, let's look at your value stream and your landscape as well as systems or connected systems, and then find out what do we need to make sure in order to ensure your production availability. And then you get to a different discussion, because then you're coming from a business outcome point of view and saying, okay, we're doing this because I want to help or support you in securing your business. I want to help you to avoid a shutdown of your production plant. And then, at least our experience is that this shifts the discussion from fulfilling corporate directives to a business outcome and ensuring business continuity. And that's where you get more open ears. And then, of course, you can come in and say, how do I do this? And say, okay, let's help. We have methods, we have practices, we have experts that can help you design security into it or redundancy, depending on what the business need is. So this is, for me, a key lesson learned. So really coming from the context of, for example, in this case, the manufacturing plant.
And you, as you sort of say, you can actually interrupt production, and it becomes a really big issue now where, you know, you're not just talking about taking out email servers and things, you're actually talking about real life operations, sometimes critical national infrastructure, could impact education, health, and many things that we deem very important. And what we've seen is a huge rise in ransomware exploiting that sort of dependency on IT. So what do you see sort of the future of that, Florian, in terms of the ransomware attacks? And do you foresee there's ever a time where we'll beat ransomware and be able to be protected and backed up enough that actually will no longer be that threat that it is today?
I'm afraid no. I don't think we'll beat ransomware completely and will be gone. I don't think so. It's an ongoing race. I think it will exist, and also it changes. I mean, the people that are leveraging or using ransomware also change and adapt to the increased security measures. So we make it more difficult for them. So let's take a simple example. So one attack vector used to be USB drives. So you just kind of have to smuggle in this USB drive, and then you're in, and then you can lock computers. And of course, many companies have locked USB drives now, saying, no, you cannot do that. Or when you plug it in, there's an automatic scan. So any malware is shut down completely. So they resort to other measures. So I think it's an ongoing race, and we will not get away from ransomware, specifically not because the increased digitization has opened up new attack vectors and new opportunities to introduce ransomware or to lure people into using ransomware. So what I think, how we handled it is something that Michael has said very early on. So understand that there will be probably a breach, or that you might be victim to of a ransomware attack, and figure out where the easiest path is. and then fix that. So really taking a risk-based approach, if you want to put it this way, and really looking at it from that point of view, and accepting also that you might need several layers of security. So Angela mentioned it earlier. I have been in a situation, just to tell a little story, where USB drives were not fully blocked, and 3 production plants were shut down, and then there was a physical disconnect of the 3 production plants, so it could not spread wider. So that's a very harsh measure, but you have to have this type of layered security. So you can actually avoid having a complete shutdown of your network.
Yeah, well, I'm impressed that I've run projects myself to try and lock down USBs, but it's easier said than done in the industrial sector and some of the areas there. It's very hard to ever close any door completely, I think, in any area. So Michael, from your experience, how can you prepare for an attack, a ransomware attack?
Yeah, so of course there are the measures which are general known, what also Florian said, having that IT protection measures like USB lockdown, also hardening systems, all that, which is relatively known a long time ago now. But the very important thing is what Florian also said. Sorry to echo that, but it is having a risk-based approach. Because if you're in an industry, in an environment, you will face so many complexity and dependencies. And as we all know, especially in the industry part, it's not easy to fix systems, because then you're losing certifications of the systems, you're losing support, whatever. So you have built something around and make alternative measures. And here it comes now for me, modern systems. In the past, we scanned about vulnerabilities, and then, we found hundreds, thousands, but then how to prioritize them. And that's exactly what Florian said. We have to find the weakest entry point for an attacker. And I'm happy that there are now windows coming up with that solution to show up the attack path and how an attacker acts. They know exactly how the lateral movement works. They simulate it and they tell you, look, you have a lot of vulnerabilities, but at the end, they can only use if they have this entrance vector. And if you close this first, you have time to fix other things. That's where we are also looking on. On the other hand, it's really key that you prepare. Let's say if there is a ransomware attack which focus on different companies at the same time, it's very difficult to get the external specialists in forensics or crisis management. So you have to prepare what I said before in front, doing contracts, doing also priorities, and pay like an insurance and hope you never need it, but you are prepared and you can get then the forensic people and have a little priority if you already contracted them and others ask them and they don't have a contract. So that's the most things here to protect against ransomware, in addition to, let's say, the standard measures. And I want to come back to the human stuff with Angela, what she said. So she's totally right when she said we need more education, and she said education and not awareness. And we're facing that also, that in the business departments all around, we have young people, they use the high technology devices. Even so, my daughter is using it better than me, even when she started a couple of months ago. But the point is, they are not trained or educated in the school about all the weakness and the vulnerabilities, what could happen, or the threats. And so they came into their business life and they are not prepared. And education is also, this is nothing what we can do as a company, but I will give this back to our countries and to our governments. that we have to invest more in education. And it's not that we want to have cybersecurity all around, but have a basic understanding. So it's like in the traffic. If you drive a car, you should have a basic understanding, and you need a license to be part of the traffic, right? And currently, we're using a lot of technologies, but many people, and it's not about them, it's more how our system works, are not aware what risks there are outside.
Yeah, it's, and I like the way you sort of talked about that as well, with that balancing. Okay, prepare yourself on one hand with your layers and your protection, but on the other hand, be prepared that it could happen, and you've got that sort of insurance and a way to recover and respond to that as well. But if I can come back to you, Angela, on the people side of things, what we know is many of the ransomware attacks do start with somebody clicking on a malicious link or an attachment with a macro embedded or something. So how do you see organizations responding to where one person does that and you have this sort of huge disaster from this one person's actions? Tell us your experience of that.
Yes, so I think if that happens to your organization, as I said, then I don't think your security, you had a very good security concept to start with. I think we have to acknowledge that, of course, you know, when we're starting from a really difficult point, I think we're only now getting to realize that the way that IT has evolved in many organizations is not conducive to a system that you can easily secure. But I've seen with some companies I've worked with that they're now very consciously that at the point when they think about investment in IT, when they think about adding new platforms and new capabilities, that at that point they start thinking about security, and they start thinking about how can we make our systems easier to monitor, easier to detect, and you know, to reduce that complexity and to have all these little Byzantine nooks and crannies, you know, that attackers can exploit. That's I think is you know, I mean, some systems are so old you can't update them anymore. I mean, what good is that? You know? So the other part is make it easier. I think we've seen one really important step this year. It's very, very clear that a lot of the ransomware stuff comes through attachment, Microsoft Office attachments. And the that, you know, to let the end user, to allow them to open unsigned macros is just, you know, it was just really a completely silly thing to do. And we have to, you know, so it's now shifted to saying, like, as a normal end user, you can't open an unsigned macro. That means, of course, the work has shifted to the security departments to look at all the macros that are written and used in the organization and to audit them and then sign them. And then, you know, it's fine, it's not a problem. But I think that was a really, really important step to take. That's a responsibility the end user shouldn't have. If those macros are a part of your business processes, then you should make sure they're safe, and, you know, you should sign them and then people can use them safe. And if they're not, then people can't open them. You know, I think that was a really important step in the right direction. And I see similar thinking with you know, with the phishing and with those phishing attacks is I think we should stop basically testing people, you know, and where they at any point think they could be ambushed. You know, you might think, well, that's what the attackers do, so we can train them further. But the reality is you cannot work or live in that kind of state when you feel under permanent threat and you feel never safe. So you can deploy, you know, first of all, look at your security concepts, filter out as much of the stuff as you possibly can. Encourage people to not go ahead immediately with things that aren't clearly labeled. And if you have DMARC and DKIM, similarly, emails can be labeled as safe. You don't have to worry about those. And then you can say to your employees, you know what, put the other ones aside and don't, when you work through them, like working, 50 emails, put them aside. And this is where you might have to basically go and spend a bit more time and think about it. And you might have to decide to ask for help, to call in. You can look at collective ways of doing it, where people can just forward emails. And then there is a Fish of the Day website, where you can sort of in quasi real time alert the whole company to malicious stuff that's coming in. I mean, in my experience is actually, if people are given a possible task, they're actually really good at it. And the whole thing is, when you start talking not just about phishing, but about social engineering, and these people are trying to manipulate you, employees are actually extraordinarily motivated to not be, not be manipulated and not be the person that is being misused, by the attacker in that way. So I think we can really get a lot smarter, in that way. And I think in several high risk areas, either ban embedded links or invest in the kind of, there is software available that allows, that basically puts it in a safe environment where people can click on a link and see what's there, but without any associated code coming across onto the company system. I would say it's not rocket science. It's just really doing your homework, and not just going at, oh, we'll put that on the user, and if they get it wrong, then it's because they're lazy or stupid.
Well, it is that sort of switch from the hapless, that those daft people clicked on the link and they didn't follow the policy, and we told them and we made them click through some training, so they should have known better, to actually seeing them as people who are motivated to help protect the company and don't want to be a victim by any of this. Nobody chooses to do that, but it can be difficult. And of course, the ransomware people are the social engineering sometimes plays to that need to help people with some of their urgent requests and pleas for help. So there's a constant sort of battle on those side of things. And as you sort of pointed out, it's that layers of security. And I think it was maybe Florian and Michael have also said, it's, you can't rely on one thing. You need to have all of that protection there. One thing you raised, I want to then pick up with Florian, because you said, it's very hard to have a perfectly secure system, or you should have a perfectly secure system. But in today's complex world, and I used to work for a large multinational, it's pretty impossible to ever get it perfectly protected. And particularly, with that advance of digital, pushing to new features quicker, faster, everything wants to be online, releases every day. Florian, how do you see that playing out, and how would you say Bosch goes about sort of managing ransomware attacks and protecting against them?
I would say I would maybe pick up on also something Angela said. There's several aspects you can watch, and one thing you just mentioned in a very short sentence, Angela, which is very important from my point of view, is a shift left in security. A shift left meaning security is not the task of the people that actually monitor the systems, because then it's far too late. Then you have to come in with task forces, a cybersecurity defense center. You have to leverage your contracts, which Michael mentioned, but that it's actually, you have to shift left security and make security an embedded part, the same as quality of your development work. So in the beginning, when you think of a system, I think Michael also mentioned in the beginning, you look at your security architecture, you look at potential attack vectors, and you try to secure them. You try to secure them, and in critical paths, you do that with several layers of security. So security, when I look at the software development in our company, security is a task of the developers. It's not something you have to do a check mark at the end of the day, but we have to shift it as far left as possible, meaning it's actually a part of the functional and technical design requirements that you have when you start developing a software, making sure the individual components, but also the whole system is secure. So this is one very important aspect, I would say. Then the second one, of course, is once you have implemented it, You constantly monitor and see, has anything opened up? Have we forgot something? And then should still there be a breach, what you do then is, we have a cyber security defense center, we call it this way. So that's a standing task force that is prepared, that has the tools, the methodologies, the training. Michael mentioned the training in the different attack vectors, and has also a predefined response plan. Because if you only start thinking of how are we going to respond when you have the breach, you're already losing very valuable time. You need to know who are the experts for the different systems. Do we have a repository of all the potentially affected systems? So if we take the unfortunate Log4j example we had end of last year, which was a big issue, but there we could really rely on our teams, basically being very fast, saying, okay, what are all affected systems? What are the critical systems? And then really having a response time saying in 72 hours, our highest critical systems need to be fixed. So all hands on deck, everybody knows what to do worldwide, do it quickly. So we were lucky enough, and thanks to our teams there, that we had a very short response time to fix all the most critical things. And we actually had the fixes already done when the updates came. So we had to redo it. Not everybody was super happy, but anyway, we knew how to do it and we knew the drill. So we could repeat it. And that's what I would say, how we handled it from a very macro abstract level. This is also what I would recommend, irrespective of your size. You should have a responsible. You should have an idea what are the most critical systems, and a draft response plan. Who is going to be in the room? Who do we need? Do we have a list of our critical applications, and then start working?
Indeed, and having those plans and testing those plans is hugely important. When it comes to the actual thing, do you think that we should pay the ransomware fines? Angela, can I ask you? You reacted there?
No, I don't. I can understand why some companies decide that, you know, that if they think that in order to save their business, they have no other choice. I can understand why they do it. But if we look at it in the bigger picture, you know, it just encourages, you know, others. It gives, you know, you're giving more resources to the attackers. You're encouraging others to get into the business, you know, because that's what it is for many of them. And I would be with the, you know, I think we've had a lot of notice and a lot of warning. You know, I remember interviewing people, the first individuals who got cryptolocked 7-8 years ago. You know, and I remember being at a banking security workshop maybe 2 or 3 years later, where everybody, you know, where the word was, this is moving from attacking individuals to attacking companies, and they're just going to add more and more zeros. You know, at the end, they originally started with like $250 when they cryptolocked somebody's laptop, right? And wanted that back. So I think it's an industry, and if you keep feeding it, it'll get worse. And I think we've had a lot of warning, and we should have the backups and the processes in place to be able, you know, to take a little downtime and get the systems back online. You know, or if you're very well prepared and have an immediate response plan, then it may not even be offline for very long.
And Michael, if I can come back to you, earlier you warned us not to say, you know, if you get attacked, but when you get attacked. So can you take us through, you know, what would you recommend to our audience? What do they need to take away and think about preparing for an attack?
Yeah, of course, each attack is individual, and it depends also what Angela said on your business and how this affects your business. So I totally also against paying ransomware. But I can also understand if companies decide to do it, even if they have no security, that they get the key then to encrypt. And the very important thing is we say always have a backup and make sure you can do a recovery. what you really have to think, and this is the message to the audience, think about when you have a ransomware, you're doing not recovering one file or a folder. You have to recover from scratch. And sometimes, and this is the worst thing, it could be also that you have a ransomware which infects the BIOS chip, and then you have to get thousands of laptops to recover in a short notice. And this is very difficult then. So you have to think with your vendors or your service providers also to have maybe some spare parts available, which you can use then to manage the minimum recovery, disaster recovery, and think about having installed media available in the same version that you have created your systems and backup. I know this is very difficult in operating, but I have the experience, if you go with updates, next version, and you have a back installation medium, and then you want to recover and you install from the basic installation medium, which is maybe a year old or 1.5 years. It could be that you first have to update all the procedures before you can get access to your backups, right? And these are procedures which have to trained, and also to having some procedures available, doing what is the English word now? I'm missing for Übung.
Exercise, yeah.
Drill. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The drill, you have to drill it. And these are the parts which I can give the audience. As I said before, make sure you got contacts about forensic partners, that they are supporting you. Crisis managers, it's not all about technical stuff, it's also about communication. So how do you communicate? To whom you communicate? Then you have the legal requirements, and you have maybe hours behind. Let's say in Germany, we have the BSI, if you are a critical infrastructure, and we have also the data protection. You have to send in a couple of hours, give them information that you have been breached. And this has to be prepared. And now I lost my line. So yeah.
I think it's really difficult as well, because not only do you have to bring in the communications, as you say, and your laptops might be impacted, you might have to actually do that without access to your Windows environment, and you need to be able to contact people and maybe have like a Google Docs or some online service to actually be able to operate as a crisis team without your IT.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah, you have a kind of independent communication channels already prepared, and you have to use it over the time, because if you don't use it, people do not get to know how to use it, and maybe they don't have the app on their smartphone because it's half a year ago. That's very right. Prepare also for an alternative communication path and use it anyway. Yeah,
it's definitely, and I think that, I can't say the German word, but the drills you were talking about, that preparation is just vital to be able to spot where the gaps are in your recovery. And now if we sort of move on to, you mentioned there, we've talked about ransomware attacks, which I also agree. I as much as possible do not pay them. I mean, even if you do, you're never guaranteed that you're going to get your data back, or in a way that you can recover it, as well as all of the things you've already said about funding organized crime and other areas. But we are spending more money on security, but it hasn't actually solved it yet. So, what can we do for the future? Is spending more money always the answer to improve security? And are there any cheaper ways that organizations can try and improve their security without having to spend all of the money? Not everybody on the audience today has the luxury of large budgets. So Michael, coming back to you, how's your spending evolved sort of over the last few years, and what are your future plans, if you can predict that?
Yes, in our case, we are as a company on a huge transition. So we building engines, big diesel engines in the past, but we're doing now going to sustainable solutions. That means also we changing our business model and also bring in more digitalization. So we spend a lot here in the baseline security, but also on the product side, in the product security. And this is, as Florian said, you have to spend in engineers which develop your embedded systems and bring this security by design. I know this is an often used sentence, but it's really key that you have security by design and think in front of it. So we spend also money here to prepare products and also production areas to protect against security. And it's not black or white at the end. It has to build in everywhere, in all processes. And here I'm also with Angela. I saw a lot of ISMS as an auditor, and I saw a lot of Word files, PowerPoints, and so on, or SharePoints. And if I imagine that information security is not the only one who building policies and controls in a company, there are many departments building policies, and it's not possible to read everything. So I'm totally sure that you have to bring in security into the processes of the business. It doesn't matter if it's development or is it HR and you have a recruiting process, then you should, as a recruiter, as an HR employee, you go into your process and look, what is my process, what I have to do in my daily work, and there should be linked up the security controls and measures, and not in a Word file or somewhere else in a kind of SharePoint and you have to read a whole document. No, it should be in the process. Same for procurement. If you implement security, you should have it in the processes like NDA, in the contracts, and so on. And yeah, these are the spendings. And what I faced also in my experience, most invests in security. They say, we have to invest this in the IT departments. But I think this is not the one and only solution. We have to take out the spendings into the IT departments and say, this is for the security part. As I said, we have to implement it in the processes and in our employees, in education, training, call it however you want, awareness. And the budget here should be always a part, security should be a part in all the budgets and not individual IT budgets. And at the end, if the company success is measured by quality, time to market, cost of a product, there should be the fourth thing. And that should, how resilient are our products, and how do we, let's say, take care about the data of our customers and of ourselves, of our employees. Yeah, there we will spend money, and I also think there should be spent money, and everything should go forward here.
And Angela, and I would also encourage the audience as well to use the chat function. What would you say is the right balance between spending money in on the technical protection and controls versus the sort of human organizational side of security? And it'd be great to get some feedback or some questions from the audience as well in the chat function. Angela.
Yeah, on both sides, I would say is one of the things that I've observed in collaboration with organizations is as a scientist, right? I always think about evaluation. Yeah, I have certain goals. I introduce an intervention, And then I should evaluate, is it working as I expected? So I take a baseline measure, I do the intervention, and then I measure. I should measure again, and so like, has it really achieved what we wanted to achieve? And I think that discipline of evaluation and of learning what actually works for your company, for your environment, whether it's a training, whether it's training or whether it is technical countermeasures, that isn't really, I don't see that taking place, very, very often. There are some companies that are very smart about it and very rigorous about decommissioning rules or security tools that don't deliver what they were looking for, but they are in the minority at the moment. I think that is, and I think when something doesn't work, that doesn't mean it's a failure. You probably had some good, it seemed a good possibility, but that doesn't mean you should keep it. You just keep throwing, throwing good money after bad, in terms of like, you're probably paying for maintenance and for people to look after it and so on. So you could use that money after. So I think it's a commitment to learning. It's very, very funny that, we used to have the plan, do, check, act cycle in the risk management. And it was one of the most quoted and least applied concepts, I think, in IT security. And that is a shame, because that discipline is really, really important. And organizations need to think about also how, as an organization, they keep learning and can keep documenting, for why they've decided to go down certain routes. I think it's gotten, slowly we're starting to do it. And, but I mean, can you imagine, just the effort it was, to get the things like password, in the official, guidelines in the UK, that first step to actually say, we're going to take away, we're going to throw out some of these things we've recommended so far, such as an overemphasis on password strengths and complex, and expiring passwords. When you actually see what the effect is, it isn't working. It has the opposite effect to what we originally thought it has. So let's take it out. And I think that is, you can, we need to do that more as a security community. Be together, working, researchers and practitioners working together to figure out what works and isn't working. But also every company needs to learn what works for its risks and for its defenses. And that needs to be, that really needs to become part of life. I think that is the whole definition between companies that are smart about it. And it's the ones that are at least trying to learn from it. Of course it won't be perfect, but at least there's some commitment there to try and, not basically put a measure in place and going like, oh great, we've done it, and then you never look at it again. I don't know, I think, sometimes you go like, well, we have these logs, and then you go and look at the logs and you realize you're the first person in 8 years that looked at them, and you go like, why, how, if you're never looking at these things, how can you think this is a vital part of your security? Yeah.
I recognize how you get a bit caught in some of these. I had in a previous role, I was trying to reduce the spend on phishing campaigns, etc., because actually some extra efforts that people have put in weren't demonstrating the results. Potentially, you could have said maybe a 4% improvement in the reduction of click rates, but it really wasn't worth the money that we were doing. But it's incredibly hard to, everybody's concerned about taking something away. And I think it is that once you've layered some security on, withdrawing it, because security is such a risk, people don't want to ever take any of it away. And I think then as a cybersecurity profession, we also sometimes are concerned about losing budget if we ever give any of it back or close anything down. So let me ask you, Florian, working at Bosch, how do you approach spending money to fix a security problem, and how do you evaluate on where to put your money, where do you put your bucks?
a tough question, as both mentioned. What I would say is you have to be aware not to fall into the prevention paradoxon. Basically saying we're spending so much money, is it really well spent? Nothing is happening. Let's evaluate the ROI. From my point of view, in security, your ROI comes when you have a breach and you're able to respond very quickly. Then you have a high ROI, and you have to really be conscious about not applying simple ROI rules to that, because it doesn't work like that. It's like an insurance. You're paying for the case that you hope never happens. But if it happens, you're happy that you have this investment. So this is one aspect. The second one is, of course, we're continuously monitoring the effectiveness of it. Also with our own approaches, saying, are our measures really effective? So are they preventing, from a risk-based approach, the breaches we are fearing? And that's how we're looking at it. And if you look at an absolute number, I would rather go to a relative view, because of course, with more and more investments into IT, more connected systems, more digitized production, of course, your absolute spending on cybersecurity will go up. Hopefully it doesn't go up linearly, but it will go up, because if you cap your cybersecurity spending in a larger landscape, you increase your risks, simply said. So it's a difficult balance, which we are looking at. So looking at how is our relative spend and how is the effectiveness of the measures we're implementing.
And so if I can just ask you then, what would be your top 3 tips to the audience?
So for me, the top 3 would be: have a cybersecurity responsible. Have someone who is responsible for methods, tools, frameworks, for having a lookout. What are the threats out there? What is something we need to watch out? Angela mentioned a few things and that are on the horizon since a few years. So have someone who is on the lookout for that. The second thing is the risk-based approach. I repeat and emphasize that point. So really have an understanding, what are the attack vectors? So where is the most risks? And I always say business risks. So what are our critical vulnerable systems? And then the drills. Michael also mentioned, have a response team that have the drills in place. So if something happens, you have a quick path to react.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Michael, can I ask you the same question? What would be your 3 things you'd say to the audience to take away?
If I allowed, I would like to echo Florian, but put something on top. Join communities and build networks with peers in similar environments. And what I recognize, the other side, let's tell it the dark side, they are organized. They do not, they are starting now a business and bringing up services, but it's like a normal business. These services are shared responsibilities, and they buy a service of each other. And also they're here on the other side, on the CISO level, on the subject matter expert level, I see there is still not an openness to share your fears and your vulnerabilities or your experience, what you met. And this is very important for me. We have to stay together. We have to bring in, exchange our observations, our know-how, our experience, because it's so important to learn from others and not think that you know everything because you read some books or you have been, like me, 25 years experience. I'm learning the whole day new things. And that is very important to share here. And that I want to add. And an additional one would be go for more automation. I see a lot of manual tasks, and it's funny that Angela talked about that macros. If I see in the companies how many Excel sheets are still used and sending around, and also, and this is the difficulty, it's not your own Excel sheet. You're working together with other companies, global, around the world, and these companies have different maturity levels. So they send you Excel sheets, which is necessary for the business, but they maybe have not the maturity like Bosch have or others. And then you don't have the signed macros, right? But you still have to do the business. But why we do that in 2022? There are systems out there where you can do this without Excel sheets. And this is what I want to give you also with, and I'm already a debate, more automation, that these manual tasks go away more and more. That are my 5 cents here.
Well, excellent. I think you touch on such an important point, that one that makes cybersecurity a fascinating topic. And I think, as we've shown today, we can all learn something and we can continue to learn. So I'd just like to say thank you, Angela, and Florian and Michael, for joining us today. I found the discussion really engaging and interesting, and I hope you in the audience have found something to take away, some useful tips, and learned something. And I wish you a good rest of your day.